People all over the world loved Dawn Wells as Marianne on Gilligan's Island, but even though she was famous, she had no family, husband, or money, and her end was very sad. In fact, she once said that the show didn't make her very much money. That's a scary number. The loyal Gilligan's Island fans helped her pay off her bills in her last years. Where did the person who used to have everything go? Come with us as we show you her house and talk about the sad truth about her money problems and death. Let's go back to the beginning to see what she went through. Pearl Dawn Wells was born in Reno, Nevada, on October 18, 1938. It's interesting that both she and her mother, Evelyn Wells, were born on October 18, 1911. Joe Wesley Wells, her father, ran a building business in Reno. Dawn often thought about how happy and healthy her childhood was. In their huge garden, her mother grew a lot of fruits and veggies, so everything they ate was grown at home. Dawn became very interested in dancing when she was a child. That's why her mom signed her up for dance classes. But after a few years, Dawn's knees started hurting all the time. They took her to the doctor because the pain wouldn't go away. The doctor told her that her knees weren't strong enough to handle a lifetime of ballet or any other intense physical exercise. For her own health's sake, the doctor told her to stop dancing. Dawn stopped taking ballet classes and focused on staying healthy after hearing this bad news. She learned how to cook with her mother and start horseback riding in her free time. When she was in high school, she worked so hard at school that she was elected president of the debate team and given the honor part. Dawn went to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, which is a private school for women after high school. Fun fact, in the early 1920s, star Joan Crawford was kicked out of that college, but Dawn wasn't. She went to Stevens College and got her associate's degree with a major in chemistry. She then moved on to the University of Washington in Seattle and joined the sorority Alpha Chi Omega. There, she began learning the performing arts. Dawn went back to Reno to see her family in the summer of 1959. She competed in and won the Miss Nevada pageant while she was there. She was able to represent Nevada at the Miss America event in Atlantic City in 1960 because she won. She tried hard, but she didn't make it to the top 10. It still made her feel something. Her dream was to work in show business. She went back to college and got her bachelor's degree in theater arts and design. Her father's building business had grown a lot by the time she went back to Reno in 1961. No longer was it just about making homes. Subdivisions and even casinos had been added to it. See the pictures. They show Dawn, her dad, and some family members visiting one of his new projects, the Four Queens Casino, which would become very popular. At this point, Dawn told her parents she was going to move to Hollywood to try her luck as an actress. Even though her dad wasn't against it, he did talk to her for a long time about the shady guys she might meet in the business. She thinks back. He cared so much about me, bless his heart. She said, "Daddy, I'm a good girl and a smart girl. Plus, I just spent years in college with other women, and we know what to watch out for." So she went to Hollywood. Dawn had to start from scratch because she didn't have a contact or know anyone in the business. It had to be done the hard way. People would come to open casting calls and wait in line for hours. Eventually, she would be called in to read a few lines for 2 minutes. She would hear the standard "thank you, we'll call you," but she would never hear back. That's how things work in Hollywood. People come in droves, but only one gets the part. The rest of them keep working hard, and Dawn did the same thing. She said it took her about 15 tries before she got a small part on the TV show Riots in the 1920s. It wasn't much, but it was something. After that, things got better. In the episode The Deadly Image of the show Maverick, she got a bigger part. After that, she had her second speaking part in an episode of Cheyenne called Lone Patrol. In that episode, she played a young woman who brought food to soldiers. After that, she was in the episode of Wagon Train called The Captain Dan Brady Story. She played a hopeful young woman on a trip westward, which showed off her kindness and charm. The next thing they did was show up in the episode Kelly's Clover Girls of Tales of Wells Fargo. Dawn eventually started writing more than just westerns. She began to show up in what you might call beach detective books. A lot of shows like 77 Sunset Strip, Hawaiian Eye, and Surfside 6. At the same time, her father was doing some important business in Nevada. He got some money from people in the area and bought the Thunderbird Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas with them. Since the casino had lost its gambling license because of ties to the mob, they had to start from scratch when they rebuilt. One of their big plans to get more people to come was to build Thunderbird Raceway, a horse track. Dawn went to the big opening and other events because she had always loved horses. She would wave to the crowd and do some tricks on her horse as she rode up and down the straightaway before the races. A way for her to help her dad and enjoy something she loved at the same time. What would Marianne do? Dawn tells a story from the year 1962. When she got home from work that day, she called her parents to catch up. She told him during the call that she had been asked to a party the next day with directors, producers, and actors. A great chance to meet new people. Her dad was really scared. His main concern had always been that she wouldn't be safe when she was with Hollywood guys. And he said, "I'm flying out and I'll go with you myself." Dawn tried to calm him down by telling him she was fine. He wouldn't give up, though. When they got off the phone, her dad started calling people. One of his friends from the casino had an idea. Dawn could go to the party with his father, who lived in Los Angeles, as a guardian. Dawn's dad agreed and called her back with the idea. He gave her a choice, which she didn't like. Either go with this guy or I'm leaving. In the end, she reluctantly agreed. The man who picked her up had a nice car, was well-dressed, and was always nice. He was obviously older. In fact, he was older than her dad. But he was a great guardian for her. He let her talk to other people at the party on her own, but he kept coming back around, so it was clear that they were together. No one did anything wrong, and everyone was nice to her. Some people might have thought he was her sugar daddy because there were a lot of older men at the party holding much younger women who wanted to be actors. It looked like Dawn and this older man knew each other better than just being friends. At least that's what people at the party thought. Afterward, she told her dad, "He was a gentleman and really looked out for me, but I don't want to project this kind of image." She thanked him for what he did and made it clear she would never do that again. She didn't have to, thank goodness. After a short time, she met a guy named Larry Rosen, and they started going out together. At the same time, her job was still going well. You may have seen clips of her from Ammon's World before. She was on the show twice. She also kept getting parts on TV shows like 77 Sunset Strip, Hawaiian Eye, Surfside 6, and The Joey Bishop Show in an episode called A Young Man's Fancy. Taking a break from her TV job for a moment. Her parents had split up many years before. Her mom stayed in Reno, Nevada, and bought a simple track house. She also worked full-time as a secretary. There's where Dawn spent most of her childhood. She said her mom never wanted help from other people. We were the only ones there. We'd cook or sew together when she got home from work. Life was easy and calm. Dawn told her dad that he couldn't take her away from her mom, even though he wanted her to live with him full-time in Las Vegas. It was too bad for both of us. Instead, they decided that she could go see him whenever she pleased. The house her dad owned was a lot bigger. He had a house with a horse stable and a groundskeeper after getting married again. He got 2 kids as a wedding present, a boy and a girl. Dawn became their big stepsister. She also said that her mom and stepmom got along great and that the kids were always welcome at both homes. Dawn Rosen got married to Larry Rosen in late 1962. Here are some pictures from their wedding practice. She was still getting TV parts in 1963, in shows like Ripcord, The Third Man, Channing, and Laram. Dawn's first movie role was in The New Interns, which came out in 1964. In the movie, she worked with Barbara Eden, who was also a rising star in the 1960s before her big break in I Dream of Jeannie. They became friends after seeing that movie and have been friends ever since. Soon after, Dawn was at Barbara's baby shower. Dawn tried out for a new TV show later that same year. The company didn't want to commit to the full season yet because the pilot had already been shot. One of the main parts was a beautiful movie star who was first thought to look like Marilyn Monroe. At first, they tried to talk to Jane Mansfield, but she said no. The part was then given to Tina Louise. Also, the makers chose to add a new character who would be the opposite of the hot starlet. That's the part Dawn would then try out for. There were more than 350 women who tried out, and Raquel Welch was chosen as the best by the company. However, director Sherwood Schwartz didn't agree. His voice was already smoky and he didn't want another one. The person he was looking for had to be young and have a good heart. That's exactly what he saw in Dawn. It was okay with the company and she was cast. Gilligan's Island first aired on September 26, 1964. There were lots of silly jokes and crazy plots on the show. For example, Marianne eats radioactive carrots and starts seeing things that no one else can. People loved it even though the idea was a little strange. Strong Numbers got it picked up for a full season, even though it was only picked up for 13 episodes at first. It made Bob Denver, who played Gilligan, very happy. But he didn't like one thing. The professor or Marianne were not named in the theme song. Since they were added after the main theme was written, they were only called The Rest. Sherwood Schwartz said no to Bob's request for a change. The theme song stayed the same for all 36 shows of that first season. At some point, Russell Johnson, who played the professor on Gilligan's Island, got annoyed by how little recognition there was in the theme song. He thought it was wrong that neither he nor Dawn Wells's wife, Marianne, were named. They were just thrown in with the others. They both agreed on the need for change, but the show's author, Sherwood Schwartz, wouldn't give in. Dawn wasn't upset. Afterward, she said, "I didn't feel like it was my place. I was just happy to be there." But she couldn't make things better. She would joke, "Oh, you mean the rest of us," when someone on set called for the professor and Marianne. This was a way for her to show Russell she was on his side without making things worse. The 36th episode was the last one filmed before it was reported that the show would be back for a second season. Bob Denver did something about it himself during the break. He hired players, rewrote the theme song, and came back with a polished version that was ready to go, but Sherwood still said no. Sherwood told them this time why. Tina Louise's deal said she had to be built last, so they couldn't add more names without moving her. Bob argued that his contract gave him the freedom to choose where he would be built, so he asked to be put at the bottom of the list. That move made sure would do what he did. He asked Tina if she would agree to the change. She said yes, which made everyone happy. Lastly, the professor and Marianne were added to the theme song. Fans groups began to grow as the second season went on. The show gave each cast member more screen time. Dawn got the most fan mail, but she said it never got in the way of things between the group. They all got along great, and they stayed close even after the show was over. Her wedding pictures were shared, and she said the Ginger vs. Marianne argument didn't really begin until the show went into reruns. Dawn was the star of many fan-favorite episodes, such as The Talent Show and The Honeybee's Performance. But just when things looked like they were going great for her, they began to change in the third season. Someone made Sherwood Schwartz an offer that would change everything. Even though the show was still doing well, Sherwood Schwartz was given an offer that he couldn't refuse. If Gilligan's Island stopped after its third season, which had 98 episodes, it could be shown again and make almost 3 times as much money. But if the show went on and the numbers went down, the offer might not be there anymore. It was safer to end it while it was still hot. He agreed then. The cast and team were shocked when they heard the news. There were still a lot of people who liked the show, millions of them. They didn't understand why it had to end so quickly. Things got even worse for Dawn Wells. She and her husband, Larry Rosen, filed for divorce just a few weeks after the cancellation. The two hits right after each other shook her, and for the first time she began to doubt herself. But she reminded herself of who she was as Dawn and Marianne, and she made it through the last few shows, cheering on her co-stars while quietly dealing with her own grief. She then lost her father, Joe Wells, suddenly a month after the show finished. He was only 55 years old. His money was a mess, so Dawn stepped in to help her stepmother take care of her younger brothers. Then her own mother moved in, and the two of them took care of the family. During this time, Dawn stopped being on TV. Casting directors told her they couldn't see past Marianne even though she tried out for parts. "My name is Dawn Wells," she tried to say, but Hollywood had already cast her. Only a few guest parts on TV shows like The FBI, The Invaders, and Bonanza while she was still on Gilligan's Island kept coming in. Things got better for her in Nevada, and she finally went back to Hollywood to start over. But the answer was the same again. "You make us think of Marianne too much." Hollywood had moved on and wouldn't let her go. Dawn kept working regularly through the 1970s, but her roles started to shift toward cheesy B movies. In 1975, she wrote her first book, Winterhawk. In 1976, she wrote The Town That Dreads Sundown, and in 1977, she went back to Boggy Creek. At the same time, she found steady work in regional theater, where she was in shows that often went on tour and made money for her. During this time, she also fell in love again. When she met Tom Irvin in the early 1970s, they were together all the time. Their relationship lasted 15 years, but they were never married. Dawn took care of Tom's two daughters like a mother, and finally moved to Nashville to be close to him. She bought that house and the one next door for her mom. She wanted to take things slowly after her divorce, so she stayed single and built a strong traditional relationship with Tom. She also became very active in caring for Tom's mother after seeing how bad the nursing home was. Together with her mother, she started making better robes for elderly people that would keep their dignity. Dawn became an advocate for seniors after this project, and she now volunteers in nursing homes and works with review groups. She also helped Tom's girls and later became like a grandmother to their kids. She became a national spokesman for the Girl Scouts, which showed how much she wanted to help and inspire young women. Even though she wasn't getting many acting jobs anymore, she did make guest turns on shows like Fantasy Island and The Love Boat from time to time. She also always came back for Gilligan's Island spin-offs or events. Dawn said there were two reasons she did it: because Marianne's fans loved her and because she and many of her co-stars needed the money. The only person who got profits was Bob Denver. Once the first 5 episodes were shown again, the rest of the group got nothing. Sherwood Schwartz owned everything, even their pictures, and made a lot of money from distribution. But Tina Louise often refused to be a part of renewal. She didn't want Schwartz to make money off of the brand without paying the players. Even though the press tried to make them compete with each other, Dawn respected Tina's point of view. In fact, the two women had worked together a lot at events and fan meetings. In one business deal, Old Navy had to use Gilligan's Island character names, which meant the deal fell through. I didn't mean to be rude to Dawn, but Tina said no because she wanted to be seen as herself, not just Ginger. Dawn had come back to California with her mother in the late 1980s. She kept getting small parts on TV and in plays, and she also helped take care of their friend and Gilligan's Island co-star Natalie Schiffer. Dawn Wells was the most important person on Gilligan's Island. She was close to everyone, but Natalie Schiffer was the one person she really felt close to. Natalie didn't have any kids or a husband, but she thought of Dawn as her daughter. She asked Dawn for help when she got sick. As she always does, Dawn stepped in quietly, honoring Natalie's wish to keep her illness a secret. Natalie was looked for by Dawn and her mother until she died on April 10, 1991. Dawn carried out her last wish by scattering her ashes in the Pacific, and she kept taking care of her pet dog. Dawn stayed busy in the years that followed, doing theater, guest spots on TV, and food shows to promote her cookbook. But her mother Evelyn died in 2004. Dawn said she felt truly alone for the first time. Soon after, a storm wrecked her house and washed away decades of memories. The money from her insurance paid for her to move to Idaho, where she bought a small country house and started teaching acting. At some point in 2010, Dawn moved back to California to be closer to the convention scene, where she made money by making appearances. She often took trips every weekend, leaving on Friday, working long hours on Saturday and Sunday, and then starting over the following week. To get more done, she teamed up with her friend Barbara Eden, I Dream of Jeannie, to do shows together. They could raise the price together and split the extra money. In 2018, Dawn had a serious health problem and had to have major surgery. This changed everything. Doug Kirkpatrick, who has been her stylist for a long time, wrote on Facebook that she was having a hard time financially and physically. Her savings were gone because of medical bills and living costs. Dawn Wells shocked a lot of people when she revealed how little money she made while the show was on. Dawn cleared up a common misunderstanding in an interview with Forbes. Fame doesn't always mean money. She was only paid $750 a week for her part, even though the show was very famous. That's about $390,000 a year now, which is a good living wage, but it was a small part of how much money the show made in the end. The show became a cultural icon, and Sherwood Schwartz, who created it, is said to have made up to $90 million just from reruns. While Dawn didn't think about it too much at the time, she did earn a bigger piece of the pie. Hollywood didn't pay as much back then as it does now, especially for women. When Dawn ran into money problems years later, people had a better idea of how little she had been making. The 2008 financial crash wiped out all of her savings, and a major accident put her in the hospital for months with huge medical bills. In 2018, her longtime hairdresser, a close friend, started a GoFundMe campaign to help her get back on her feet. People liked the fundraiser, and it raised more than $200,000 in the end. Dawn felt touched by all the support, even though she wasn't sure what to do at first. Dawn didn't give up hope. She posted a touching message thanking her fans for their love and support. It was something she never thought she'd happen, not having family or money, but she was thankful for the help she got. At the time, she told Inside Edition, "I'm not broke to the bone." He said, "I can get a job and go to work." I didn't ask him to do that. But she later wrote on Facebook, "I'm amazed at the kindness and affection I've received. Here I am without family, husband, kids, or money. I'm grateful that God has given me so many friends and fans who care." Dawn Wells found peace and quiet in her later years in a simple ranch-style home in Driggs, Idaho. She moved to this small mountain town with the money from her insurance claim after losing her old home in a terrible flood. All of her personal photos and Gilligan's Island memorabilia were washed away. The house she picked was cozy, not fancy, and in the middle of nature, which matched her down-to-earth personality. The one-story house was on a quiet road and had a view of the Teton Range. Inside, it was cozy and warm, with simple furniture, soft lighting, and Western touches. In the winter, the small stove in the living room kept the room warm, and the kitchen was always smelling like something was baking. Dawn really liked cooking, especially from her own book. The house also had a special room where she taught acting to people in the area, giving them a comfortable and private place to learn. There was no flash or glitz, just a woman who had lived a full life and helped her community. Dawn's home in Idaho wasn't big or fancy, but it had a lot of heart, just like her. Dawn died on December 30, 2020 at the age of 82 after getting COVID-19. She was buried next to her mom, not only as Marianne, but also as a kind, loyal, and gracious woman. She is still respected. Love to her friends who are still remembering her on her Facebook page. They only want love and respect, not money. At the time of her death in 2020, Celebrity Net Worth said she was only worth $50,000. But she left a mark that was worth much more than any amount of money. Donations in her name can be sent to causes that were important to her, as she asked. You could go to the Terry Lee Wells Nevada Discovery Museum, the Elephant Sanctuary in Tennessee, or the Shambhala Preserve outside of Los Angeles. It breaks my heart to think about how hard it must have been for Dawn Wells financially in her last years. It's hard to understand why such a bright and well-liked star had to go through so much trouble, even though she was still getting some money from Gilligan's Island. Hollywood really needs to feel bad about how it treated her. What do you think about her trip in the lift? Leave a comment with your ideas. Thanks for seeing.